everyone, and welcome to Building and Sticking to Matter Budgets. Today, we are talking about this in the context of TimeSolve, which is a wonderful program that I hope you've been getting a lot of information about and that you are considering implementing in your office. We're going to wait just one more moment to see if anyone else would like to join today's presentation. Lots of folks join live, but we also have a huge number of folks that watch us later on when it makes more sense in their office to do so. So you are always welcome to review these with us, to come to the live presentation, to ask questions, or to reach out to us afterwards. So you see that today's presentation is brought to you by ProfitSolve. That is the parent company of TimeSolve. We have a tremendous number of solutions that are available to you, but TimeSolve is one of our most popular options. So let's just jump right into it. And let's be respectful of everyone's time here today. All right, so my name is Joyce Bradford. Hello. I'm a practice management consultant here at ProfitSolve, and I am a legal tech nerd. I don't know if we need to trademark that or copyright it, but I definitely am. I've been doing legal tech and practice management since 2011. That's when I got started at the North Carolina Bar Association. Since then, I have been in or around legal tech, advising firms, acting in a consultant role, or actually selling software. So if you want to know the ins and outs of all the competition out there, I'm probably a person who you can get a lot of good information from. So please feel free to reach out to me. All right, so today we are going to talk about overhead costs. We're going to talk about how fixed fees play into matter budgets. And we're also going to talk about really the meat and the potatoes here, which is mapping your matter budget. That is the hardest part of this. But if we can conceptualize that and get our heads around it, then the idea of matter budgets just makes a whole lot of sense. So let's get right in. The first thing we need to do is determine our overhead costs, and don't get too caught up on this chart. It is here for visual purposes only. So we needed a slide. So here we go. So let's talk about determining our overhead costs. Now, one of the things where you can be caught up in your law firm when you're thinking about overhead costs is looking just at last month, right? What we know here is that we have monthly costs, quarterly and annual costs, and we have ad hoc costs or ad hoc expenses. All of these things need to be built into your overhead. If it is not related to matter income or matter costs, it's associated with the overhead and running your practice. So your monthly costs, some of these do stay pretty stable month over month. Your rent, your payroll, the benefits that you pay to yourself and your staff, subscription fees, some of those are going to be monthly, as well as your utilities. Now, quite obviously, utilities they can vary pretty wildly month over month. So it's important. One of the things that my utility providers are able to do for me, not do to me, well, I guess maybe do to me as well, but do for me, is they can give me my average cost over the course of a year to make my monthly payment stable. So there are spikes in electricity, both in the winter and the summer, and they level out in the fall and the spring. And rather than paying, whatever it happens to be, $250, $350 in energy costs for my small office over the course of a month, I can average that out to something like $55, right? Whatever it happens to be. So you can make that, you can understand what your overhead costs need to be there. Your quarterly or annual costs, please include your taxes on this. It's easy to forget about those, but your taxes need to be included. In fact, if you have a CPA or a bookkeeper that you're working with, it's a great time to connect with them about what your costs are. If you're running QuickBooks, you can look at last year's costs, and QuickBooks will even help you categorize each one of your expenses so you can put them in the right bucket. You can even create a custom chart of accounts to track all of your spending in a very granular way to help you create better budgets in the future. Do not forget your bar dues and your professional fees when thinking about your quarterly or annual costs. Include the cost of CLE in there as well, folks, and your insurance costs. And then you have ad hoc costs. And these are much harder to anticipate, right? What's your hardware replacement? General office repairs. What do you do if you have a chair break? What do you do if you're subject to a break-in or someone damages your front door, right? Miscellaneous business expenses. And please keep in there a discretionary budget. You just need to build a discretionary budget into your ad hoc office costs so you can buy your office mate a cupcake on their birthday. You need to be able to buy thank you cards for your clients if that's how you choose to build up your referral business. But you need to have a budget for these ad hoc costs. Don't buy into this idea that your budget needs to be this extremely belt tightened type of thing. If you're not making money, then definitely you need to look at ways to tighten your belt. But when you are creating your budget, you need to consider all of these costs. Maybe you need to not engage in some of them, but let's think about them first. Let's put them on there and then let's take them off later. So why are we talking about overhead costs? We're talking about it because you need to build in your overhead costs into how you are going to set your budget, right? How you are going to create your matter budget. How many hours do you need to work in order to meet just your overhead costs, right? Separately, you can think of the amount that you need to build into your fee for you to get paid, right? But your overhead costs must be built in to your total budget in order for you to appropriately set your fees, right? So now let's talk about calculating fixed fees, because although this isn't the primary purpose of today's webinar, there are lots of folks out there who like the idea of fixed fees, and it makes sense. It doesn't make sense for everything that you do, but it does make sense to understand how fixed fees are calculated and when you can deploy them. So fixed fees, and I just want to be really, really, really clear about this. Fixed fees can be and should be deployed as a fee methodology when you have a churn and burn type of practice, or let's use professionalism terms, right? Let's call it limited in scope. So if you have a practice area that is extremely limited in scope, you know exactly how many hours you're going to put in on something, or even if you can just guesstimate it, if you know exactly how much work something is going to cost, you can build that in. Most common type of limited scope engagements where we see fixed fees are traffic court matters, right? It's not going to make a lot of sense for you to charge those clients hourly. They're going to want to know exactly what they're going to be billed. So having a fixed fee on that makes a tremendous amount of sense for you. So how do you calculate what your fixed fee should be? You need to add your costs, your time, the total value of your time, and then you also need to include the proportionate amount of overhead. So what are your costs, right? Your costs as it relates to a matter. These are not your office costs. These are your costs associated with that matter, right? Are there filing fees? Are there expenses that you need to pay upfront on behalf of your client? And then there are soft costs. These are not general office costs. They are office costs related to a specific matter. So are there copies that need to be made? That paper that those copies are made on comes from your stock, right? You need to recoup the paper cost for your client. So maybe you charge 1.5 cents or 3 cents per copy, right? That's the most common soft cost that we see, but those hard to measure exactly, the things that you bought to provide services to your client, but when you purchased them, it wasn't with a single client in mind, but recouping those work-related expenses that are for your clients. Those are called soft costs, and you need to build those back into your matter budget as well. So money that you pay on behalf of your client up front is a hard cost. Recouping the cost of office supplies is a soft cost, right? You need to value your time. What are the total hours worked, and what's the total value of your time and your staff's time? What is that worth to you? And then you need to determine the percentage of overhead that is appropriate to build into this, right? Are you going to do this by percentage? Are you going to just say, this is how many hours I expect to work on this? I know that I can only bill 25 billable hours in a week, but I'm budgeting out my overhead for 40, so I need to figure out the percentage on that. And each one of those hours that I'm working, I'm going to have a specific percentage of overhead that's covered there. That's absolutely possible. But however you choose to manage this, you need to make sure that your overhead costs are covered in this. It's not just how much you're paying you, it's how much you have to get paid, and it's how much you have to pay to keep the lights on in your firm, and how many costs or how much are you going to charge to recoup the expenses that you're paying on behalf of your client. Okay, So let's keep moving here. So let's go back. There we go. Let's talk about mapping your budget. So this is the most challenging part of creating a fixed, or excuse me, creating a matter budget, right? It's the actual map of what you need to do. Now I've got some very basic information here, but this can get very complicated. So we're going to keep this high level for the purposes of today's webinar. First, you need to define the stages that you're going to do the work in. Two, you need to determine the work required in each phase or stage. You need to determine the costs in each one of those stages. You need to determine the general timeline here, and you need to calculate the value of your work. So again, this is really basic. We're just going to call this a standard case, right? Now this can apply, these stages can apply to just about anything that you're going to do if it has a mediation, right? But these are not the phases that you're going to apply in every single case. This is not going to be appropriate for an adoption matter. You know, it's probably not going to be appropriate for an immigration matter. So you need to figure out whatever phases you have. But for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to think about this in 3 phases. You can have 17, 18, you can have 22 phases if that's easier for you to conceptualize and get a better understanding of the value that you're providing in each one of those phases, right? So in our pre-trial filing here, this is going to be phase 1. We're going to look at a client consultation. We're going to include the initial discovery. We're going to generate documents and demands. We're going to file claims. We're going to have a client status meeting with our client, either in person, on the phone, emails, whatever it happens to be, how we choose to do that. But all of those things need to happen within that phase. Could I break this up? I certainly could, but we're going to, again, just call this the pre-trial filing phase, right? If I break down other phases for this particular matter type, and again, I want to do this by matter type. There is not a way to define these stages for every single matter that comes into your office. It needs to be by practice area or by matter type. Mediation is going to include things like client prep, document review, claim adjustments or amendments, meeting time, travel expenses, client expenses. There are 30 different other things that I can add there. And then in the trial phase, again, client prep, document review and amendment, time and trial, staff resources for the trial, document prep, additional client status meetings. Again, I can add 60 different things to each one of these, not a big deal, but I need to be, as I'm creating my map for my matters, I need to understand everything that I'm doing in a single phase. And if I feel like I'm not recording everything that needs to be there, break your stages up into additional stages and try to think about it that way. Really, you are creating a Kanban board. That's really what you're doing here. You're creating a Kanban board for how your matters move through a pipeline until they get to resolution or they get to close. Your goal here is just to have some very specific parameters around each one of those phases. Put as little or as much as you want in each one of those phases, but you need to, after you define what those phases are, you need to define the cost in each one of those phases. So let's just look at the pretrial filing cost here, right? If I look at what I need to be thinking about in my pre-trial phase, I know that a consultation, I'm going to charge somebody $500 an hour for a consultation. Discovery is going to be 3 hours. I'm going to have a different rate for discovery. Maybe I'll hand that off to an associate. Maybe I just have a different discovery rate because I don't feel comfortable charging $500 an hour. Whatever it happens to be, I'm going to assign my hourly value to that in my drafting of documents. I also have the cost for service. I have court fees. I have client status updates. I'm going to do 2 hours of client status updates at $500 an hour, right? I'm going to look at any cost, any task, any item I need to check off in each one of these phases is going to have a cost associated with it, either an actual hard cost, a soft cost where I'm recouping the cost of office expenses, or I'm going to have actual time that I'm putting in this, and I'm going to include this right here. This is going to give me, if I have everything ticked off, it is going to give me the value of each one of these phases. After I determine the value of each one of those phases, and I say, okay, this is the total amount of work that I'm going to put in this, that I estimate that I'm going to put into this, I'm going to say, this is my budget. This is what I anticipate I'm going to charge my client, right? Going to add all those phases up, add all those costs up. This is what it's going to be. I see how much time it's going to take. This is how long it's going to take. This is my budget. Now the question is, okay, well, we've done that. Now, how do we stick to our budget? And that is where TimeSolve gives you some amazing, amazing solutions that are not available to you in some other fancy practice management solutions that are out there. If you want to talk about creating matter budgets and you want to talk about sticking to them and you want to make sure that you have happy clients at the end of your representation, TimeSolve gives you some great options to do that. So let's go through and look at some of these things directly in TimeSolve. Now, I didn't want any lag time because I'm actually sharing this webinar live. So I took some screenshots here. But when I go into TimeSolve and I create a matter, I have all of this that is available to me. If you've not created a matter in TimeSolve, if you haven't downloaded a trial, you need to do it today. This is crazy. This is amazing stuff that you have right on the dashboard of each one of these matters. So my general tab gives me my the name of the matter. I'm just calling this an adoption matter. Here's today's date. I have my estimated end date on this as well, so I can keep track of when I anticipate something will close. That is a very, very helpful tool. I have my responsible timekeeper. I have if it's billable or if I'm going to hold billing for a specific period of time, which I can certainly do. But importantly, for the purposes of today's discussion, I want us to go right over to the budget tab. So I took a screenshot and I highlighted this. Right there, without having to do anything fancy, you have a budget tab. You have a budget for your total hours worked. You have a budget for fees separately. So you can say, you know, I've got a couple different folks who are going to work on this. They might have different hourly rates. Doesn't matter, but we're not going to spend more than X number of hours on this. We're not going to spend or charge more than X amount of dollars for fees. I have expenses. I can estimate those as well, just like we did with all of our phases, right? I'm going to say this is where we're going to cap expenses. And separately from all of that, I have an individual invoice amount. So I could say, okay, well, I'm not going to charge more than a certain amount of fees, but then my costs get exorbitant, right? Exorbitant. What I can do is just have this budget here, right? That's very fun to have. Or I can actually prevent from exceeding. If I click prevent from exceeding on these matter budgets, if I try to put in a time card, I get this lovely little red banner right at the top. And this says matter fees budget exceeded, and it will not allow me to charge that to the client. I'd have to go back into that matter budget and make adjustments here, right? So this is really important so you don't accidentally overcharge your client. So I have some, I had one charge on there. I attempted to enter another charge on there. It said that my matter budget is exceeded. I went back to my matter tab, and here I have my progress bar. I can see how much is budgeted, how much is my actual spend here, in addition to my remaining spend. And I even have this progress bar, so I can say, you know, exactly how far. If I'm a visual learner, I can see exactly how far along this budget is. Now, if I wanted to click prevent from exceeding, okay, that's fine. I'd still be able to charge the client, but I would be able to see in this matter budget that I have exceeded the estimated spend, and I would need to go back to the client for that, right? Now, the question is, if I have this flat rate budget, I do this because I want to make my clients comfortable. I do this because I want to get paid, right? Those are pretty important tools. And I do it because I want to be responsible to my clients. So what I'm also going to do, in addition to these budgets, is I'm going to set up a payment plan for them, which is also available to you in TimeSolve, where you can set recurring payments, where you have a payment methodology on file that charges a specific amount all the way until you get to invoice zero, or it can continuously charge your client as long as you continue to work for that matter. All right, we have a question. Does this work on the app as well? Will the app prevent you from exceeding or online only? Amy, the app should prevent you from exceeding as well, but I would encourage you to reach out to the TimeSolve team. In fact, Amy, if you give me, if you send me your email address, I will have the TimeSolve team reach out to you this afternoon, email address or phone number, and I will give you a 100% accurate answer on that topic. And again, folks, if you actually have any other questions, thank you so much, Amy, for yours. If you have any other questions that you would like for either me or the TimeSolve team to answer, please submit your questions, but then also submit your email or your phone number at the end of it, and I'll make sure that the TimeSolve team reaches out to you. All right, it is now 20 after. I try to stop these right at 20 minutes, and then we have some time for questions, but I'd like for you all to get some time back. I know that this is non-billable time. This is administrative time. I want you to have time to go and actually bill your clients. All right, Amy says you're going to reach out directly. That's wonderful, Amy. I encourage you to do that. They're a wonderful team. All right, are there any other questions that I can answer for anyone today regarding TimeSolve or the ProfitSolve family of brands? We, are here. We're TimeSolve, Cosmolex, Rocket Matter, Tabs 3. We have CRM solutions with Law Ruler. We have online social solutions with Clearview Social. We have project management with Paymo. We have website building and pay-per-click ads and marketing with TitleTap. We have a lot of solutions that are available to you folks. Just about everything you need to run your office can be found within the ProfitSolve family of brands. So check us out at profitsolve.com. Please reach out to your TimeSolve team directly. I'm sure that they've been emailing or calling you and would love to share absolutely everything about TimeSolve with you. If you don't have any other questions, I'm going to end today's presentation. And thank you all so much for your time. I sincerely appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great week.